Okay, back on the stagecoach here. Last time we finished up building the entire suspension for the coach itself. Now we're going to start on the coach. I have all the parts here, both sides, pieces that go between them, pieces that go across top, pieces across bottom, and then the outside wrap. First though, get everything else out of the way, we need to glue these pieces onto the top of the coach. They'll be flush at the top, glued in place. I'll get those glued and clamped. Not too hard to do if I can find my glue. As usual, I'm just using Titebond wood glue with this. Whoops. Sorry about that. So, these pieces here, literally just glue across the top and clamp in place with the curved side to the side of the coach. Lots of glue on it, don't worry about, whoops, hurt my light. Change batteries. Lots of glue on it. Don't worry about squeeze out. You'll be able to scrape it off or whatever. You just want as much strength in here as you can get. So that's going to put the sides under a lot of tension. Glue them up. We use a couple of these stronger spring clamps for the ends. Just bend it around. Looks like we got a little bit extra here, so I'll hang it out over the end. Even get on camera so y'all can see. And do the other end. And then I'm going to take a bunch more clamps and just put right across the rest of it. You could probably nail it, but why? That, make sure you got good contact all the way across the top. And we'll just set that side to dry. I'll get the other one glued up, and then we'll come back, and then we can glue the two halves together. So here we go. I went ahead and, after gluing the top parts of the side pieces in place, went ahead and glued the whole thing together. Couldn't really show it on camera because it's been all just hands there. But I went ahead and actually glued everything down to a piece of paper to get the top flat and square, although I still have a little bit to do on it to get it squared up. And went from there to glue the top piece on. Everything's glued here is super glue. Then up here I ran a fillet of wood glue for what it's worth. I'm going to let this thing dry for a while, and then the next step is to put this covering piece on. So we'll let this thing cure up, and I'll come back and do that. So I have the wood glued all the way around the outside of the coach now. I would trim this top end because I want to see if it's going to pop off if I have to pin it. If I pin it, I'm going to run a pin from the outside edge here into this top beam. I think I'm going to have to do it on this side though. I'm not sure about if I have to do it on this side. This is glued on using a combination of wood glue and super glue. As you can see, there's lots of overhang there that needs to be trimmed off. And I'll do that once everything is cured for a day. This end here got glued today, so it's still curing. Get didn't have to steam it around. It was able to be bent around. I did, after bending and gluing and clamping it in place, wet it down using iron to just heat it up and get some relief into it, so it's not as under tension, under stress. So this will all dry off. We'll come back. I'll trim this off, probably off camera. I'm not sure if I'm going to be using an X-Acto knife to cut it off. I have a blade that's using X-Acto knife as well. I can use it, or if I'm going to use the back saw to cut it off and get it close. So I'm going to let this cure. I'm going to get that done, and then we'll come back and start seeing how to line this interior. Okay, so I went ahead and trimmed this side of the carriage off after gluing this piece of wood on. You can steam or whatever around. I found that I could just bend it around, glue it in place, and I came back afterwards while everything was clamped, wet side down, ironed it to help relieve some of the stress. Glued on with a combination of wood glue and super glue. I went back and I trimmed this edge off already. To trim this edge off, you can use your back saw and cut down as far as you can. You can just use an X-Acto knife to just come through and cut this off against a hard surface. Keep scoring it back and forth, back and forth. Or you can sit here and just start trimming it off with a pair of side cutters. I use a combination of the back saw and the X-Acto knife. Then I went through with a plane and just shaved off the edge to get it pretty flat. Don't worry about how this looks, you just want it smooth, because this is going to get more pieces on it to bulk it out, and you'll never see this wood again. Matter of fact, all of this wood, once you're done with this coat, you will never see again. So I'm going to go, so like I said, I was trimming the side off. Try to get light and camera in here. And I was, with a X-Acto knife, you can just keep running along this edge until you cut through. And what I'll do is I'll get a section done and cut it off, because this is garbage wood here. You're not going to use this again, no need to save it. So I'll go ahead and get this side cut off, smooth off, and then we can start lining the interior. I already have my wood cut for the interior for these two ends, and I have the rest of my wood staged. So I'll get this trimmed back, and we'll come back and start working on the interior. So I have the, get some light in here. So I have this side planked or lined on the inside. To do that, all I was doing is I was coating the wood and taking some of the pre-cut pieces of the 1/2 mil by 30 mil wood and flip it again. There's a slot down here it fits into. Slide it in, hold it flat, and let it set up until it's held firm against the side. Be advised this stuff is thin enough and porous enough that the wood glue will eventually work its way through it. So don't be concerned about that, it'll sand smooth and look good. And then you have to put these sides in, cut them to shape for these that are curved on the bottom. They don't tell you how to, they just say curve it to fit. Fortunately, unless you threw it away, you still have this piece that gives you the curve that's down there. So you could take the piece you're going to put in there, cut it to width, shove it in here so it lines up this edge, draw it out and cut it, and you just cut this stuff with a pair of scissors. This is the bottom, and it's curved, so this is the side, so you want to go on the side of it. And just get that nice curve and cut it. And then you can go through with just more pieces of this and fill in all through here, including this area on top. So I'll go ahead and finish all that up, and then we can come back and start putting in the floor. So I have the entire interior in except for up here on either side. I'll do that part off camera again. But meantime, I want to show you how I trim this stuff off, these extra pieces. So you want to let your veneer go long and trim it to fit. And what I do is I take a backing piece and stick behind it, and I very carefully, with a very sharp X-Acto, trim it away right along the edges. And that will give you a nice sharp edge on the inside. You can also come back afterward and just very carefully trim it off like that, running the blade parallel to the, or flat against the framing. Don't try to cut through it all at once. Just keep lightly scoring it, and it will cut through. And you'll be able to tell when it cuts through. You just keep doing that all the way around. You get all this trimmed off, and it will be a nice sharp edge. Just make sure you got the wood between the knife and your finger. Like I said, nice sharp blade. And you'll be able to trim it away. Get it nice and flush. Once you do that, I'll get the other side, all this top edge here done, and then we can come back and start doing planks on the flooring. So now I have the floor in. It's all drying up right now. I'll sand it when it's done and do some trimming on the edges. One thing I would make a suggestion if you're building this for yourself or thinking of building this for yourself is this piece that goes to the bottom of the coach, that's the white plywood. Do this planking before you glue it in. That way we can get all nice and smooth and the edges all trimmed up. Then you only have to worry about what you're doing on this very edge at the step. And that's going to be covered up anyway by another piece of wood if there's a gap. Excuse me. But now it just needs to be sanded up. And at some point in time, I'm going to throw some Danish oil stain on it and call it good. And then we can move on to working on, I think it's the outside next. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this video. And when we come back, this interior is going to be sanded and coated with Danish oil. And we start working on the outside. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.